Now, the series I've been waiting to talk to you about because I got to tell you, Curry, that one season, the final season that you played in NYPD Blue, let me tell you, I mean, you deserved an Emmy nomination. I really believe this. But the first thing I want to ask you is number one, how did the part come about for you, or how did you audition for that? And if I remember correctly, you were in an episode of NYPD Blue very early on in the season. So it's kind of crazy that, like, maybe 7 or 8 years later, you came back to the show playing a regular. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so I had done Stephen Bochco had a show on the air called Philly.
Yes.
And I believe it was Kim Delaney who was doing the show.
Yep.
And I was brought on to play this guy. He's a very funny character who escapes from prison by pretending to be someone else. He just lies and says, "Are you so?" They say, "Are you so and so?" They say yes, and they release him, and he goes to his lawyer's house. And I did this role, and I went in to meet Steven with this part, and I did it, and he just saw something, and he gave me this role. So when NYPD Blue came around, he brought me in to read, and I had a very, very different take on it. And I went in, I read for him once, and before I got home, they'd made the offer.
Right. And you know what's crazy, Curry? I didn't mean to cut you off, but I was so mad, and it's nothing against you, but I was so mad that they had gotten rid of John O'Donohue. He had been the sergeant the year before, and I really wanted that character. Like, they always kind of made him like a comedic character. He was never somebody they took serious, and I really wanted Sipowicz to kind of respect, Eddie Gibson. So I was so disappointed. But I'll tell you what, after your first episode, that went away quick because I think the show needed Sipowicz to have some type of rivalry again. He kind of had that a little bit with Arthur Fancy, but he needed somebody that was going to really test him and see if he could get through it. So, I mean, it was just unbelievable how that all came about. But let me ask you, did you know going in that Bale was going to be like sometimes good, sometimes bad? Because he wasn't, even though in the first few episodes he's micromanaging like crazy, you saw these little hints that he had a decent side to him. So just let me ask you, what did they want out of you from that character?
I'd sort of talked to Steven about it and the writers, and what we'd sort of come down to is that I wanted to, my idea was to run the precinct like a CEO of a company.
Yeah.
As opposed to, I'm not going to be buddy with you. I'm not going to be your friend. I'm not going to be, we're not going to go out for drinks together. I'm going to run this like a tight ship, and it's my way or the highway. And I think it was great for Dennis because it created such deep conflict, because I don't know that any boss, any lieutenant had ever spoken to him the way I did.
Yeah. And the thing is too, Curry, is he kind of, Sipowicz kind of backed down from Bayo early on. Like, he kind of bit his tongue a lot, where he never did that with any other lieutenant. He basically, if he felt like they weren't doing something right, he spoke up. And I thought that first scene where, like, Bayo and Sipowicz disagree is when Bayo interferes with their interview and he talks to the guy. And they're trying to talk to him in the office, and Bayo's just basically, giving him a lukewarm attitude, like, we're done here, guys. We're done. So, I mean, right away, I think you were going to see in that season that this was going to be a difficult transition for Sipowicz and the rest of the, crew on, in the 15th precinct. So, I mean, were you satisfied with that first episode saying, you know what, we got something really good here?
Yeah, I knew when I read the writing. I knew. Obviously, I knew Dennis's work. I'd worked with him a few years earlier because I'd come on and played some racist piece of shit who killed a bunch of people, and so I kind of knew what his work was. And then the writing that they delivered was Billy Finkelstein and Stephen Bochco. The writing was so great. It was so tight. It was so good. And I knew Dennis and I we had chemistry.
Yeah, definitely.
We both were like, we both wanted to kill each other.
Yeah.
And
But
I felt like it really translated. Sometimes you have that chemistry with people, and then you watch and you go, well, I don't know if it really translated to the screen. There was no doubt in my mind from the very first day that he and that this would transfer to the screen, that we would be able to see this tension.
yeah. And
This,
the funny thing is too, Curry, is like Bayo would nitpick at everything, like he's busting his chops about getting an oil change for the car, and he's telling them to do it right then and there. And then he's also telling everybody you have to sign the book when you go in and out.
oh yeah,
So Bayo had these things, but the one thing that Bayo was doing that people may not have realized, and if you watch the reruns a lot, you see it. He may have been a pain in the ass to them in front of them, but behind their back, he was backing them up. He was defending them. And no, you see that right away when Sipowicz could have lost his job when he put the gun to Stan Hatcher's head, and Bayo goes to bat for him. And I
mhm.
thought that told me that even though Bayo's going to be difficult and he's going to bust chops, he's going to have the officers' backs whenever something comes
And
up.
that again, comes down to the writing. Is that as an actor, you walk into Steve Bochco's camp, and you know that the writing is going to be there to support you. And
Yeah,
I don't have to do a lot. I have to know the words, and I have to understand my intention. But by trusting the writers to that, I'm not just going to be an asshole all the time.
yeah,
And I leaned into being an asshole. I'm not afraid to do that because I know that at some point the writers will give me a space to be human.
yeah,
Like when Dennis was going to write his exam to be a lieutenant,
right.
and I'd been really hard on him, and then I gave him all my notes.
Yeah, yeah,
Here's everything I know about doing it. So it was just little pieces of humanity would pop out. So the audience would be like, you know what? I hate him, but he's not all bad.
yeah. And you could see that. And I think the worst moment in Bale's time on NYPD Blue is when he went after Medavoy for working at that bar. And the great thing is, you and Gordon had a great scene together where Gordon's basically calling you a coward, and you never lost your cool with him. I almost felt like Bale, what Medavoy was telling him, Bale could realize that maybe he shouldn't have done it, but at the same time, he was very calm and he said, I realize this is an emotional day for you. So I think maybe you go home and you come back tomorrow and start fresh. But I mean, that was a crazy scene. And I thought you and Gordon had a great dialogue in that scene.
Yeah, again, the writing is so tremendous, and Gordon, he'd been on the show for a long time. He had that character dialed in, and he was really fun to act opposite as well.
And a very underrated actor. I mean, I was so happy to see him get an Emmy because he played that Medavoy character tremendously. I really felt like everybody loved Medavoy.
Oh, they did. I think they really did, and he was really good at it. And you know what? Everybody was really good people.
Right.
Like you go, it's sort of a trickle down effect. I think, like with Bochco, the tail doesn't wag the dog, but he's a very generous, kind guy, and he
Yeah.
he believes in his craft, and he runs a tight ship. But within that, we had so much fun.
Yeah.
He became a great friend and mentor to me for years.
Yeah.
Um,
I
we
mean, he was tremendous. I mean, think about all the series he did. Hill Street Blues. I mean, even Doogie Howser, which was like a comedy, but with drama filled into it. And he did a great job with that. And I mean, the guy was just a talent with everything he did.
and he was another one of those people that I found sort of validated my existence as an artist. I mean, we finished when we finished NYPD Blue. I got a call from him, and he said his assistant said Stephen wants to have lunch with you at the Fox Commissary on whatever day it was, at whatever time, at Stephen's table. Okay, I didn't know Stephen had a table at the commissary, and I went to the commissary, and I thought, I don't know what this is about, and I sat down with him, and we talked, and he said, he was so kind. He said so many kind things to me, and he said, I just want you to know uh, that every show I do from now on, you're in.
Wow.
And I was like, I mean, you hear it all the time. I hear that you hear that stuff all the time. And he said that, and it wasn't a few months later, I was on another one of his sets, and then I was a regular on another show, and that went for a few years. And then I was a regular on another show. And that, he was a man of his word. He was
Yeah.
a man of his word, and he respected my work ethic. He respected my sensibilities. He respected the fact that I had his back as a producer, as a showrunner, as a creator. Um, we became good friends. We used to have lunch all the time, and you know what? I miss him. I
Yeah, and
miss
he
him.
really was a credit to the business. He really was. I mean, he was tremendous in everything he did. Um, Now, I look at some of Bale's finest moments. Number one, when Sipowicz becomes sergeant, it's Bale that organized all those guys to stand and salute him as he's walking down the stairs. And you see that Bale is proud that he got sergeant. So that told me that Bale wasn't really a bad guy. He was a ball buster, but he did respect people's work ethics and what they did. So I thought that was a tremendous scene. And then he also put in a call so Sipowicz could stay with the 15th precinct. And then, of course, the biggest moment is when he realizes he's going to retire. He gets shot, and he doesn't feel like he can work anymore. And he basically tells Andy Sipowicz, if you want this job, I'll recommend you for it. And I just thought, and I brought this up, and we played a clip of it, that scene with you and Dennis where you're, giving him advice, and then he puts his hand out and he shakes your hand. And when you say to him, it's all yours. I mean, that was just tremendous TV. And I thought it was awesome for you because you got to be a part, even though you weren't on that show, for most of its run. In the end, you got to be in like one of the final scenes and have a great moment with Dennis, who was a four-time Emmy winner, and he really was NYPD Blue. And I thought that was just awesome, and that had to be a proud moment in your career.
Yeah, it was. I think that I remember shooting that scene. It was a very emotional day for everybody because it was the last day of shooting,
Yeah,
and so everybody was very emotional about it. Dennis was emotional. Everybody was very emotional about it, and I felt like the way they structured the shooting schedule to put those scenes at the end of the entire series to make us shoot those on the last day just added another quality of emotional life to the scenes. And it was a great experience. It was a great experience.
and now, did you and the cast know that that was going to be the final season, or did they decide it midway, or did you
Well,
know going
I
in?
mean, there were some. I mean, I'd been there was some rumblings about maybe doing a couple more. So I came on and ABC liked the chemistry between Dennis and I. So there was sort of some rumblings about maybe we could do a couple more. And I remember Dennis coming, talking to me, said he'd think about it. And he came to my trailer one day and he's like, I've been doing this character for basically 30 years.
Yeah,
So I understood. I totally got it. Look, selfishly, I would be like, yeah, fucking, let's do a couple more, and I can, blow the lid off this thing. Hang on, plug in my computer. I'll blow the lid off this thing. But I understood what he was saying. I knew that he'd given his entire life to, this character, and that, he was done. And I remember talking to him, and he was like, I'm not just done with this. I'm done. I'm
yeah,
done acting.
yeah. And he
And
really never did act again
no, he
after
never
that.
did again.
Yeah,
He got sent scripts. We had the same agents. And I remember them saying that he sent him some scripts and stuff, but he never did. And yeah, I've seen him a couple times, but he never did again. And when he said he was done, he was done. And you know what? Rightly so, because he
right.
gave everything he had for 30 years.
Oh, I mean, it
That
was
guy, that guy came to set every day, never asked for lines, always knew his stuff, was always totally prepared, was 100% there every single day. And I had I remember, I'll tell you a story. We were doing a scene. This sort of sums up who Dennis was as a person. We were doing a scene one day, and there was an actor. It was me and Dennis and a guest star, and the guest star was nervous. He was nervous, and so it came around to his coverage, and he couldn't get it out, and people were getting frustrated. And he went to do another take. He went to start again, and he couldn't get it out. And Dennis said, "You know what, guys? Can I just stop for a minute? I got to get some water." Dennis threw himself under the bus, and he
Yeah.
took the guy and he walked him over to craft service, and they had a coffee and they hung out and they talked for like 5-6 minutes, and everybody waited. And the kid came back, and his feet were on the ground. He was back inside his body. He felt totally fine. And Dennis said, "Okay, I feel good now. I'm ready. I'm ready."
Yeah.
And the kid did the scene. We got it all out. And I remember saying to Dennis afterwards, "That's one of the nicest fucking things I've ever seen a number one do on a set."
Yeah. It
Because
really is.
most of the time, a guy would go like, "Oh, come on, man," or whatever it is. Get your shit together. He didn't do that, and
That
I
says a lot
admired
about
him
him.
for that. And I remember clocking that, going, "I want to be that guy too. I want to
Right.
be that guy."
And interestingly enough, Curry, I bet fans probably didn't realize this. I don't even think you were 40 yet when you got this part. Like, you were their boss and stuff, but you were younger than like Gordon and Dennis. And I don't think people probably realized that because you had to play their superior and you acted so much. Not that like once you're in your 30s, you're going to be mature, but still, you really like played that part to perfection. I mean, you really looked like a boss in the working field. And I mean, th- th- where would you rank that role in your career? I mean, where would you put it if you had to put it?
It was definitely top five of
Top
anything
five,
I've
yeah,
ever done. And not just the role, but the experience itself. What the experience meant to me, not only as an actor, but for my career, for my friendships, for my relationship with Steven, what it taught me. There's so many things that happened when I got that role that changed my life.
right,
Changed my life as an artist and as a man, as a just a human being. Being able
right,
to go to lunch, once a month or twice a month with Steven and sit down and talk about, what are you writing? What are you reading? How's your kid? What's going on? What's happening? All that other life stuff, right? As opposed to just business. It's about life.
yeah,
And he was great about it. He really, that role opened a lot of doors, uh, and it opened a lot of avenues for me in terms of friendships and just being seen differently in the industry.
right. And so let's talk about 2023. What do you got in store for uh, maybe in the next few months? I mean, anything lined up that we could look forward to seeing? Because I know you keep going. You haven't stopped and you're still
No,
working.
I'm waiting for some things to. There's a show that I did for AMC that hasn't aired yet, called Parish. Boom.
Yeah.
Happened to be wearing a hat. And then I did 1923 with Harrison Ford and Helen Mirren. So
Oh, wow.
I did the last couple episodes of that. So I think this spring I will head back to Montana and be another asshole, be another hard-assed man.
Yeah.
I work with Timothy Dalton mostly on that show, who
Right.
is he was an amazing guy, just an amazing dude.
Yeah. And let me ask you, Curry. I mean, in the type of work you do, there's never a time really for a break. I mean, you're constantly working and it's, long hours sometimes and things like that. But I mean, does the drive is obviously still there and you love what you do, correct? I mean, there's not a single regret. Everything that you've been doing and you've done in the past, you have been satisfied with everything, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've always looked for more. I'm a seeker. I want to seek out more. I want to seek out new experiences, new challenges. I've last few years I've started writing a lot and sold some stuff, and so I'm busy creating as well, which is exciting for me, and learning a new skill. And it fills in the time, between takes or
Right.
between days. You go to Montana and you work a day, and then you're off for 4 days. And believe me, where we're shooting, there's not a lot to do. There's a
Yeah.
Walmart superstore and some gas stations, and that's about it. So you hold up in your hotel room, and I write and
Yeah.
I create. So I sold a series a few months ago, and I'm working on got a script option for something else, and I got another thing in the works. So it's been good, and I know I put that all back to Botchko. You know, he's like, your job is to create. whatever
Yeah.
that is. You're going to create as an actor. You're going to create as a writer. You're going to create what you have to create.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I got you, man. And that's what I do. You know,
Right.
I try to do it every day. I was writing this morning and wrote all day. So
Right. Now,
yeah,
let me ask you, Curry. You talked about John Candy, how working with him, what it meant to your career. Is there one actor or actress that you haven't worked with that you would love to work with? Maybe do one film with, or even do a guest spot with. I mean, who's that one actor or actress out there that you would love to work with?
who's the guy that does Perry Mason?
Raymond.
The
Well,
guy who's on HBO right now. He's phenomenal.
yeah.
I
I'm
can't.
not sure because I remember Perry Mason, but the older ones.
No, it's the new one, and I think he's fantastic. Um, I'm trying to think who else I would. That's a great question. Matthew Reyes.
Yeah.
Matthew Reyes is phenomenal. I don't know. I mean, there's so many talented people, and there's so many new people, and
Yeah.
um, to work with.
I mean, I would love to see you. When I watched you working with Dennis and the chemistry you have, I always said I would love to see you work with David Caruso and something. But you know,
I did an episode of that show.
Miami, CSI
Yes, I am.
Miami.
I
Yeah,
did an episode of that. I'll tell you another actor I worked with who blew me away was James Spader.
yeah, he is excellent. Yeah,
That guy, man, he is so freaking talented. He's so talented. It
yeah,
was
he really is. I mean, he's a credit to the business. He really is.
amazing to watch him. And he was another guy that sort of took me under his wing, who was very kind and very supportive and very inclusive. You know, he was a very kind of an aloof guy, kind of kept to himself, but whatever reason, I was at work, he would always call my dressing room and be like, come on over, I'm sculpting, I'm doing sculpting. And I'd go over
Yeah,
and hang out and laugh. And he was such a talented guy and a sweet guy. A lot of respect for him.
right. So before we go, Curry, what would you say to the fans who continue to support you, who have supported you over the years? I mean, what would you say to them? I mean, like as far as what they've meant to you in your career, because I think any actor who says the fans don't mean something to them, I don't want to say they're lying, but they're not being, 100% truthful, because I really think it's important when an actor knows that people follow their work. It makes them,
Well, I
it
think
gives them a lot of drive.
I think it's everything. I think that's
Yeah.
the reason. I think it's the reason I continue to get work. I think it's the reason I continue to be employed. I think it's the reason that I I love what I do so much, because I know that people are entertained. I know that people have feelings. Sometimes I get emails, or not emails. I get tweets and stuff that are like, "I want to kill you," and I'm like, I'm so glad that you feel that way. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Um,
And as an actor, you've done a great job, because if they hate you, you're playing that character the way you're supposed to.
I'm okay with it. People
Yeah.
ask me sometimes in interviews like, "Oh, don't you get tired of people hating you?" And I'm like, I would be tired if people. I would be upset if
If they
people
didn't.
watched me
Yeah.
and felt nothing.
Yeah.
I would. I if they love me or hate me, great. But to be ambiguous, to feel nothing, that's a scarier idea for me. So when I step into a bad guy, I'm gonna fucking play a bad guy. Like on
Yeah.
1923, I remember Harrison Ford came up to me and he was like, don't be afraid to be bad, because bad here is good, and everyone's bad, and everyone's good, and I'm bad, and I'm good. And he was great.
Right.
We laughed our heads off. But I think that, that's what moves people. We
Right.
don't, we don't want to hate somebody. We want to love somebody.
Now, I really believe if they hate a character, like especially in Sopranos, we were talking about that. I hated the character Ralphie, and I couldn't stand the character Richard, and that's a credit to those actors that played those parts, because if you hate them, they're doing what they're supposed to do.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly, exactly.
really. Well, Curry, this was a real honor for me. Number one, I really think you're the cat's meow. You're that good, and you've done a tremendous job. Thank you for that one season on NYPD Blue, because I mean, I watched season 12 a lot, because the dialogue that you and Dennis have is tremendous, and just so many other things I've gotten to see. And I mean, you were tremendous in Suddenly Susan. I mean, I loved the episodes you did in Murder in the First. I mean, you're just a tremendous talent and a credit to the business, and I really do applaud you, and I appreciate you giving me a few minutes today.
Oh, Mike, it's my pleasure, and thank you so much. I really appreciate your recognition and your kind words. It means a lot.
Well, thank you. And folks, there you have it. I mean, this is one of TV's unsung heroes. I mean, if you get the chance to watch his work or follow his work, please do, because this is a tremendous talent and you don't know what you're missing. So please, if you haven't seen him yet, check him out because he's all over the place. For In the Spotlight, I'm Mike Kenichi saying good night, everyone.